What up, y'all? Welcome back to Fixer. It didn't happen. I am Fats King. I am joined as always by my brother, the Yeti. He's in one of these boxes up here.
What's up? Ha! Yeah, I always pop around and I make myself all gigantic, so I'm in the middle of your whole screen. Welcome back. Time for a great show. We got a surprise, brand new guest for you.
Absolutely, this is something we were swerved this way by our friend Dirk Manning, who we'll talk at length about at a moment. But because of Dirk, and this is just always we always talk about networking, being friends with people. Because of this, we have scored the inker exclusive of the Blaze comic and various other fucking projects that we're also going to talk about. Austin McKinley.
Hi, great to be here.
Well, thanks for stopping by. It was amazing. If you've been to Astro.
If you'd been to Astro, this would make a lot more sense to you. There was a big rollout for Blaze's comic, which as Juggalos we're a big fan of, but we're going to talk about that way later. We want to start all the way back. So, what the hell does someone decide to do when they wake up and be like, I'm going to draw for a living? Like,
it's a decision you come to terms with over the course of your life. You know, like everybody draws when they're a kid, and some people just keep doing it. So like I illustrate comics. I also do video production and graphic design. So I have some more adult pursuits, but comics are my first love, man. They're the language that I learned to read in. They are the second or third parent that I had growing up. It's a medium that I love and I love to consume and contribute to.
Likewise, we are huge fanatics of all things graphic arts, comics, the whole thing. And it kind of comes with the territory of the generation we grew up in. So I guess the first and most important question, what was the character that snagged you?
I remember I had a few comics given to me by various people when I was a kid. I had a couple of things that were like Harvey comics that I barely remember. I had a dog-eared copy of Star Wars number 86. That was one of my earliest things. But then in fourth grade, I had a buddy that was really into X Factor. And I came on right when Louise Simonson and Walter Simonson were taking over the series as a husband-wife creative team. So she was writing the book, he was drawing it. His stuff was amazing, and that set my brain on fire, and it's never recovered. So that was the thing that I grew up consuming vast quantities of.
Nice. X Factor is a phenomenal offshoot spinoff of the main X-Men series.
So it's steeped in that drama, and that's one of the things that to me I really enjoy when a series has that kind of backstory, that kind of history that it comes to, even if it's just suggested. It was a spinoff, and so they were, after a number of years where they had moved on to other characters, they were reintroducing the original X-Men and saying what they had been doing for years, and they were in some sort of weird side project, so coming into that as my entry point, there were decades of backstory that were all, asterisk at the bottom of the panel, see X-Men number 280, whatever it was. Oh, I guess I got to go find that thing and figure out what they're talking about.
Now, will you try to explain that to someone who doesn't understand this? Like, there are 70, 80 years of continuity of between the two main companies, not to mention all of the other offshoot friends with your Vertigo and things of that nature. But I want to stop this part because I'll go on this forever and ever. So I want to rewind it back to just more about you. So with deciding that you're going to draw, how old were you that like this stopped being a hobby? You're like, I'm really going to do this. And what was your age on that?
It was probably in high school at some point. So when I was in middle school, I was still, drawing as a hobby, as, this is just something that I'm passionate about. But I I moved to South Carolina when I was 12 from Texas, and I had to make all new friends. And the great friend that I made was somebody else who was passionate about comic books, and so we started making our comic book together, and we uh, put it out every couple of months. We, went to the copy store and we copied, stacks and boxes of these things and brought them to school with us to sell to our friends, and got in trouble for that. Um, and this just sort of continued through high school, I remember a number of points where I was just like, this feeling of collaborative creation is the most intoxicating thing that I have ever experienced, and the ability to build a world and have those clever insights, and somebody else gets it and riffs on it. And I just thought that's all I want out of life. I want to be able to do that uh as much as I can. And so, it was an evolving sort of thing. How professionally can I do it? Can I make money doing it? What needs to happen in order to make that a reality? But I've been self-publishing comic books starting in middle school and continuing to the present day, now 25 years later.
What was the going rate for a trade paperback for you back in the day? What was the first price you were charging people for your art? I'm so curious.
The lowest we ever charged was free. Uh, so the scheme, when I would say that I started publishing professionally, so our first foray into trying to make this a business, we were using a free press magazine model. So the idea was we would distribute the magazine for free, and it's full of our comics, but we would have sponsors and ads and stuff like this. So we would take them around to restaurants and hotel lobbies, any place that had a newsstand, and we would sometimes with permission, sometimes we just sort of surreptitiously distribute them. And the idea was just to get them into as many hands as possible and make our money on the back end. It didn't work out so well, but that was the
plan.
Yeah. One of our schemes was at the opening of the Phantom Menace in 1999. We had a parody issue, and we handed it out to people who were waiting in line to see the film. That was one of our schemes.
That's not really a bad play.
Good. That's really good guerrilla tactics. I definitely have to commend that. And it's quite similar to some of the artists we listen to and how they have to get their media to people. Is sometimes you literally just have to go, here, take this. Just take it and don't throw it away.
Right. That's been one of the things that I really enjoy about the community of fans for Blaze and for Twisted is even though that wasn't, my scene growing up, I really get the DIY aesthetic. I get the promotion, I get the showmanship, and so I feel a kind of kinship to that scene, because I understand how they're going about getting their art in people's hands.
Yeah,
so it's kind of crazy. You said you're from the South, and way back when comics weren't necessarily the most accepted format to tell a story. Kind of just looked at as kids stuff. But with you showing ingenuity at such a young age, as middle school, what did your parents sort of think about this whole process? How did they get behind it?
I think they've always been just a little bit bemused by it. I think they probably thought that it's something that I would grow out of or give up on at some point. And at this point, I'm in my now mid 40s. They have accepted it, and they know that this is just my world, and that's how it's going to be.
The proof of the pudding. You can't deny that you're living off of art. So that's right there. So I'm sure it wasn't really a ha-ha moment, but I bet it felt good to buy them something really nice with comic money.
We may not be there yet, but
he says we'll get there. We'll get there.
That's still a dream.
So you're in college now, and let's put it. We'll put it to there. What is the project that gets you onto the eyes of some more bigger names in the industry to start getting you promoted around? Like, what really helped you start gaining some traction?
I started as a colorist, so some of my first professional jobs for other people that weren't self-publishing, were that. So I worked on Frank Miller's RoboCop and some stuff for Alias, and I got I met some people who happened to be local who were working on the comic book that went out to subscribers of the City of Heroes video game. So that was
I remember that game.
yeah. So one of the fun things about that game was if you were a subscriber to the game, you received a comic book, and it was also distributed in comic book stores. And I colored issues 5 through 12 of that. So that was my first like run on a professionally published and distributed comic book. And we sold a few thousand in comic book stores, and many more thousand were distributed to just players of the game who I don't know what they did with them or whether they liked them, but that was my first big job. Yeah.
Nice. That is a hell of a get right out the gate like that. And you forayed that into more success because you're still here doing this. What were some of the early lessons you learned with gaining a little bit of traction, finding that foothold of a little bit of success, like how to keep propelling that into the next thing?
I think that the biggest lesson was just to be dependable, to turn your stuff in. You can traffic a lot in talent, but if you can't meet deadlines, then it's no good. So I feel like a lot of the people that I work with that I respect and appreciate, and the people who continue to hire me do it because they know I'll turn my stuff in.
I mean,
that's the most important thing.
No, that really is. That's the number one thing. If someone calls on you to do something, do it. There is a whole lot of hard talk and people who say they can and don't come through. So the fact that you highlighted that as one of your early lessons, that's a good lesson to learn quite early out the gate. So you've gained some traction, you've gained some press, you're making noise. How do we meet the lovable Dirk Manning? How do we get to where we are now intertwining in the same universe, so to speak? We're multiversing here.
Yeah, we both came up right around the same time, and so he had just started his Nightmare World online comic, and there was a forum called Digital Webbing where you could put together collaborative teams, say, here's my project, this is what I need, or this is what I can do, if you're looking for this and that. So I was in the colorist vein, doing that City of Heroes book and some other stuff. And then I also threw in with Dirk Manning to color some of the early Nightmare World shorts. And then as we got to know each other better, at one of the shows that he first saw my stuff, he's like, oh, you also do artwork, do you want to draw a story? What do you like to draw? And that's one of my favorite things about working with Dirk, is that he's a very collaborative person, and he will, tailor the story. He's got dozens of stories. Which one best fits your strengths, what you are interested in spending your days illustrating? And so we've always been able to find projects that we like working on together, and he's got something fun for me to work on.
Nice.
So I did a number of Nightmare World shorts, and then when he started Tales of Mystery, I came on and helped with that some, and then we got to the point where we're doing graphic novels and licensed books together, and so it just continues to grow.
So, okay, now that we've gotten to the foundation, now we are, how do we get you to writing for Blaze, for a comic book that I honestly had no idea was happening until we fucking got to Astro, first and foremost. And just the success of the project, like I just want to know everything, if you want to tell it.
For sure. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. We had just finished doing the mystery graphic novel that is in stores this month, It's a 132-page graphic novel that's a creator-owned title that Dirk wrote and I did all the illustrations for. And we were working on some other creator-owned stuff. A project of mine that Dirk is helping me with in the editorial and project managing capacity. And then, a little less than a year ago, he called me up, and I was actually on a trip. So for whatever reason, I seem to his pitches align with me being in a place where I have really bad cell phone reception. So, I'm like at a hotel bar in a random city, going, you want, wait, you want me to do what? You want me to draw what? So he was the one that stage managed this whole thing. He pitched me on the story itself. I was already familiar, obviously, with the work that he had done for Twisted, because he's done now 2 award-nominated graphic novels with them. So I was familiar with the milieu already. But he's like, we're doing a spinoff in that universe. There's going to be another book, and I've got my buddy Rob Humphrey's going to write it, and I think you'd be a really good fit for the project because your style sort of goes with this, more street art, gritty, violent take that we're going to do with this story, like in the same way that the Twisted book is played a little bit more for laughs and is like an adult Scooby-Doo sort of thing. The Blaze comic is very different tonally, and it's wanting to be harder, more in the visceral horrorcore / street culture that is part of
the pulpy edge, like Sin City and things of that nature.
Yes.
That's beautiful.
So he thought I would be a good fit for that. He put the team together, and I said that'll be great. We did the Ashcan, and then I got to go to Astro and meet a lot of these people for the first time and see them perform. And oh man, like I appreciated it before that, but going to see them in person, I got it. Like seeing ABK perform, seeing Blaze perform, I'm like, okay, I know how I want to draw this now. This is the that's where the light bulb went off, and I'm like, okay, I can.
So you're like doing scouting work while they're performing and shit. That's
yeah,
really
a little bit, taking some photo reference, because as an artist, you can watch video, you can see photos, but that doesn't necessarily help you translate it into your medium. Comics is a different medium. It's not movies. It's not illustration exactly. It's a narrative thing, and so seeing how, especially with a property like this that's based on a real person, I'm always observing for my drawings how people move, what their mannerisms are, like how they tell stories, and incorporating that into my artwork. So
that brings me a very interesting question. What are some of the main mannerisms you noticed from Blaze? I wonder.
One of the things that surprised me seeing him in person was how animated he was. Like I watched the music videos. I got, and I saw some interviews too where he's not really in character, and so he's a little bit more chill and downplayed. But when he's on stage, he's bouncing around, he's shifting his weight, he's almost like shuffling, like he's doing really energetic stuff. And my impression of him was being a fairly large dude, like just physically tall and so I wouldn't assume that he would move the way he does, and seeing him perform that way, I got to imbue my drawings with some of that energy that I saw him do. That it's been really challenging with this project finding the exact right tone, because there are things about Blaze that are clearly tongue in cheek, and yet we're doing this narrative that is mostly played straight in terms of the crime and punishment sort of milieu, and so finding the right uh tone for the the humor of Blaze. And even though he's an anti-hero in this story, um he still has to be likable. He has to be a likable anti-hero on some level, even though he does
Yeah.
horrible things and is a horrible creature that is uh uh divulged from the grave in as disgusting a way as it can be. um he's still got to have a bit of a smirk, a bit of
Yeah.
some moxie that we see in him, that we appreciate and enjoy. So
It's
yeah.
the same reason why we accept characters like Freddy Krueger. You have to have,
Right.
like you just said, that joke, that smirk with the brutal violence laid over it. You can laugh
Mhm.
at it because their attitude takes just a little bit of the mirth out of all of that gore that you just dropped on the page.
Right. Right.
Okay, so now that you've seen our part of the scene or whatever, do you think that you'd like to stay here, continue writing for other people potentially on M&E if that was ever pitched? I'm not trying to blow any spots or ask for any exclusives. I'm just curious if this is something you could see as an ongoing partnership.
Well, it's been a really fun ride so far, and if this comic does well and they continue to want to work with me, we'll find a way to make that happen.
That's phenomenal. So these are back to the more comic related questions. If you could work on any book or work with any artist right now in the major scene, working for DC, working for Marvel, even in the past, who would you like to work with?
um One of the things that I'm itching to do from a collaborative standpoint is to work with some of my favorite artists from ago. So if I could collaborate with Walter Simonson, if I could collaborate with uh, Xander Cannon or Jeff Smith or somebody like this, like I'm more in the indie sort of vein, like
Well,
I
that's okay.
haven't kept up with Marvel and DC so much. I
Most people
tend to
haven't. It's getting really weird.
um well, and like I always feel that stories have a life cycle where they are fresh and relevant and have something to say. And you know I like the established iconic characters as much as anyone, but you get to a point where you know what new do you have? Are they relevant, or were they created for a particular time and place? And
Yeah,
there are new stories that need to be told. So I would always be interested in collaborating with somebody that I respect artistically, to create something new. That's what I'm about.
that is awesome. That is a great answer.
So
Um,
when you talk about creating stuff new and with being doing the indie circuit, you can really open up the options as far as what kind of story you're going to tell.
Hmm.
What's kind of your favorite story that to tell, or one that you really want to tell that maybe you haven't got a chance to yet?
Well, I'm in the process right now of doing a ridiculous lifelong dream project. So that comic book that I used to photocopy back in the day, uh, I'm doing an adult version of that. So it's
oh,
a comic book that is in every way what I thought would make a great comic book when I was 13, uh, but also satisfying my artistic ambitions now as a professional. So, uh, I've posted about this a lot on my social channels, but this is the print on demand preview of that book, and my blurry background is
It's blurry.
messing with it. But Riot Force, it's a sort of
oh,
sci-tech military thriller with all the sort of explosions and cyborgs and ridiculous over the top action. You know, more slick and futuristic. Think
Jim
GI
Lee,
Joe and RoboCop.
Wildcats.
What?
Jim Lee, Wildcats.
Sure, that kind of thing. Yeah, that's what I love, and that's what I've been producing so far. The first issues will be published this fall. I've just finished the fifth, and I'm continuing to do it. I've got a vision for this story that I want to tell, and I'm just going to go through and do it, and then it will be published as it is, as they're ready for it. But it'll be just sort of in the vault and done in one space and time, one creative impulse mindset. I'm the kind of person who my style and sensibility is always evolving, and so I don't want it to be the issues to be separated by months. I want this first story arc to be done all in one go. So that's my passion project, and that'll be the next thing that you'll see.
Has this been something you've had cooking the entire time you've been working? Like, this is a real cool full circle moment you're sharing with us. Like, has this always been something that's been like the dream, even though you've been pursuing this? Like, this is always just kind of like your dark tower just sitting in the background?
It's something that I can't get away from. Like, I just sort of realized that these characters are so imbued in my personality and the kind of stories that I want to tell. I've reinvented them a number of times at earlier points in my career. I've done novels that are sort of an outgrowth of that same creative impulse. But this is the first time I've really wound it back and said, what if I did the comic that I thought would be amazing when I was 8 to 13? What if I really pushed it through that filter and just did the most over the top action, Jack Kirby kind of splash, and really push what I can do in the comics medium and have it be a complete package. And so it's the comic book that I didn't know I needed to do until I decided to do it, and then I realized that it was absolutely something I've been waiting my whole life to make happen, and learning the different pieces of it that I can now bring together in one package.
That is great. Last few things I want to touch on. So with everything being pushed more and more to adaptation, what can we take from the page to the big screen? As a creator, would you like the attempt of watching part of your vision go on the screen and be successful, or see your entire vision, all the things you want, put on the screen and then it not be successful? Like, I guess the question I'm asking is the exposure that the mainstream is granting to these stories that we all know. Everybody bitches and moans about, oh, they changed this, oh, they changed that.
Yeah.
Is it worth the adaptation for the exposure, or would you prefer seeing your full vision brought to life and then fall catastrophically? I know that's an odd.
No, I get what you're saying, because I think that we've seen adaptations that really try to interpret the source material in a very literal way, and it kind of falls flat. And then we've seen things that, in order to make it a good movie, it has to use the source material as a springboard, but fundamentally change it in some key ways. And I think that is something that every creative team has to wrestle with. So I had the opportunity to make a short film version of one of the shorts that I drew with Dirk Manning for Nightmare World. It was a little science fiction story called Life in a Glass House, and it's about an astronaut who wakes up on a alien world, and he's running low on oxygen, and he's trying to get back to the base, and then, as you might expect in a Dirk Manning story, there's a horrible twist, and things are not as we thought they were. And I'll leave it there in case you want to watch and or read this this thing, but one of the things that we really learned uh, in that experience, even if we didn't know it before, was comics are not movies and movies are not comics. They are different languages. They're cousins. They share some of the same sensibility, but what plays in a comic does not necessarily play on a film, and vice versa. So, I think that there are lots of great movies that are based on books, and they wind up needing to change the books in some fashion. And how you go about doing that adaptation is in itself an art form. And one of the things that I appreciate most about movies, and I think anybody who has worked in any capacity in production will tell you this, it's a miracle that anything good ever wrong. And so when I see an adaptation that maybe doesn't play as well as you might hope, I think, well, they have a huge challenge, and nobody is there to make a bad movie. Nobody shows up to work every day, with something as all consuming as that and goes, I think I'm going to stink it up today.
No,
Everybody's trying their hardest. And so I respect the work that goes into them, no matter, if it came to adapting my material, I would be very flexible and say, whatever we need to do to make a great movie, because a movie is not a comic book. A comic book is not a movie. If you're making a movie, make a great movie and do what you need to do to make that happen.
And that just goes back to speaking to the thing you were talking about before, how you are truly a collaborative artist, and it's the thing you really enjoy the most about this. Last thing I want to touch
Absolutely.
on before I let you go. One of my favorite things in comics, my favorite things in medium in general, is the villains.
Of course it is.
I'm the bad guy, man. I can't help it. I told you. If you told me that being a good person meant that I could move things with my mind, cool. But you told me I could strangle someone with my mind, I'm going Sith all the time. We talked about this. That's sidebar. Who is your favorite villain?
In comics or in
you can
media in
crisscross. If you got a few, name a few. We're just here, man.
Okay. One of the first Apocalypse, and his four horsemen, and I really thought that they did such a great job of making them and dangerous and driven and ruthless, but also having a core of humanity that you understood the frustration with life and the torment that drove them to abuse their new powers when they're granted, and so I thought that was a really poignant villain. Apocalypse himself is this ancient character that is in the throes of an evolutionary war, and he has his reasons for acting the way that he does, and they're ones that even an 8 to 13-year-old can understand and appreciate and respect, even if we say maybe that's not how we want to go about doing things. One of the things that I learned in writing is that a great villain has to have a meaningful message. He has to have a positive intent and a destructive methodology. He has to have something that drives him that we understand, but it's a thought experiment. How does it work out if you pursue even well-intentioned ends, taking these shortcuts or making these compromises? Everything is a trade-off, and you can't do it all. So if those are the trade-offs you make to accomplish your ends, what does that make you into, and what kind of world does that create?
All right. So the last thing I was you talked about sort of the crossing over to different genres, and this is sort of like that. I've been drawn into a few too many comics because I look at the cover art and I'm like, man, this is amazing.
Sure.
but then it's completely different style inside the book. Is this
Right.
bait and switch, or is this because of how long it takes to do cover art compared to the internal?
I think it comes about for a lot of reasons. I think that it started primarily as a marketing thing. It doesn't necessarily take any longer to do a great cover than it does an interior page of artwork. And, personally, I like for the cover to reflect the style on the inside. That's my preference as well. But I also understand that the cover is an opportunity for you to do something kind of interpretive and artistic or more designy. The interior of a comic book is storytelling. It's a narrative. It has to hang together as a piece across multiple pages. The cover is an opportunity to do something that is standalone and possibly a little bit divergent. So, to whatever degree people want to exercise that freedom and create divergent works that explore the characters and the setting of the story from a different perspective. I think it's a great opportunity to do that. Like one of the things that I think is great about comics that is different from movies, that is different from books, is that you still use your imagination to a fairly strong degree when you're reading a comic book. There are figures there to sort of hang it on, but they are abstractions. They're not photorealistic. They're cartoony to some degree, and it's up to you when you're reading it to fill in the space between the panels, to imagine the timing, to imagine the tone of voice. There are suggestions of what that is. But one of the things that a different cover can present is, here's another interpretation of the character. Here's, like Picasso's Cubism paintings. Here it is from a different perspective at the same time, and you can imagine the reality of those characters for your headcanon as somewhere in between those two things. Or if there are 5 variant covers, now you have 5 different interpretations of what these characters are and embody. So, I think there's a lot of fun to be had with it. But as a narrative artist, I always want to have my art on the cover if I can have it. But like I like getting to see other people have a crack at it too. So it's all good. It's a big sandbox. There's room for everybody.
Actually a great explanation. I hadn't even thought about it that way. So I guess thanks to all you cover artists that have given me the watercolor Ninja Turtles in my brain to add along with all the classics. So
there you go.
Yep, you're paying it back. There you go. This has been awesome, man. I appreciate you taking the time and sitting down with us. When we talked to you at Astro, I knew that this was going to be a great conversation, and I'm really glad that it came through the way I was expecting it was. And I would, if you ever have anything else you want to talk about, please, whatever, reach out to me,
absolutely,
reach out to Eddie if you haven't already. We would love to have you back on. Our favorite is making return guest reviews. When they need to find you, if they want to find your art, they want to find a project you're working on, and how are they going to go about that? Where do they need to look?
The best place to go is my website, austinmckinley.com. There you can sign up for my newsletter, where you will get a no more than once monthly fire hose of all the nonsense that I'm involved in that month.
Outstanding. Well, that is a perfect way to wrap this all up. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Everybody, we'll catch you guys on the next one. And don't forget, hit the subscribe button before you take off. Thanks. Peace.